CASAT Podcast Network. Welcome to Season 6 of CASAT Conversations, where we sit down with professionals who have spent decades in their fields like mental health, addiction treatment, business, sociology, and more. In this special season, our guests share valuable wisdom from their careers, reflect on what has kept them grounded and inspired, and offer advice for future generations. Whether you're new to the field, uncertain about your next steps, or feeling burned out, these conversations provide guidance and reassurance from those who've walked this path. Let's dive into today's episode. Today, I am delighted to welcome back Beverly Kyer. Beverly is a returning guest. She is a best-selling author, former teacher, clinical social worker, trauma specialist, and former author of the Kyer Group Corporation. Welcome, Beverly. We're so happy to have you back.
I am so both thrilled and honored to be asked to come back. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
So as we get started today, I'd love for you to share with us your career path and any key experiences that defined and shaped your journey to date.
Well, let's see. My career path, I began my career actually as an elementary school teacher. And I always point that out because that kind of determined my career path in that I had a sixth grade class, very smart kids. But I seem to always notice the children who appeared to be neglected or abused. I don't know why. That was a focus, and I guess it was kind of a calling. And I spoke to my principal a few times because I wanted to address it. And she said, well, that's outside of your purview. And I couldn't. And over time, by the second year, I was really distressed about that. And so it just occurred to me, I want to do something about that. It was also interfering with the children's learning capacity. And so I left the teaching industry. I wasn't satisfied with their inability, or maybe lack, whichever it was, of following up on what's happening to the children. So I decided to go get a degree in social work, which I jokingly say so I could meddle into those situations and do something about it, address it, because I was really, really passionate about childhood education development, yes, but their safety and their wellness. So I became a clinical social worker. And when I graduated with my master's, my first assignment was children with cancer and leukemia. And that was basically a choice. Who would be my new director had offered me several positions that were open that required a social worker. And I picked the children and I picked them and their families because I was already somewhat connected to that. And I felt like I could really add something to it, a measure of comfort and certainly understanding and empathy to them, not only to the children who were suffering. I knew I could make a little bit of a difference working with the team and working with the parents, but also, especially working with the parents. As a parent myself of one child who was very sick, child that I adopted that was also had health issues, I felt that I could really understand and support the parents through a struggle with one of the most frightening things in the world is not to have control over your children's health and well-being, and with always the threat, of serious illness complications and or death. And so that's the job that I took, and I did. I was able to add a measure of comfort, a lot of support, a lot of resources. I was supported enough by the management, the director of the pediatric oncology unit, to add resources and try out new things to increase compliance, which he sat down and told me. He says he's never seen that level of compliance. And when there's more compliance to those awful treatment protocols, the life sustains longer for the children. And so I felt really, really grateful to be able to do that. All in all, though, in answer to another one of your questions, I never considered what it was doing to me. I was just very very passionate about it. And on top, I had all these wonderful ideas. I could comfort people. I could help them bury their children. until it began to add up a little too much. The losses, in terms of how I felt about the losses, I think I was pretty dismissive about it. I just need to get up and do the next thing, help the next family, help the next child. And so it took its toll. And then it came to a point where I would just melt down over something after some crisis, be it resolved or it had a really horrible outcome. And so I was thinking about leaving. It's something in my spirit that is really difficult for me to leave when there's a need. However, somebody came to me and said they would like me to consider working with veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, which would require a lot of training because post-traumatic stress disorder at that time was not fully even in the DMS, diagnostic manual, psychiatric disorders. I just twisted that all up, but I think you get what I'm saying. And so it was a lot of training. And I said, well, yeah, I could do that too. Again, I was somewhat related. This is not why I took the job, but my first husband went to Vietnam and came home without his mental health. So I said, yeah, I could help. I could learn about this illness, which nobody knew anything about it before. And my lean toward that is that people typically feel that when their soldiers, their children, their spouses return, they could do some things and nurture them and feed them and comfort them and pamper them and talk to them, and somehow they're going to be the same. And my position was that they're not coming back through that door the same. And because I knew that, I said, look, I want to learn more about this so I could impact that, not only with the veterans, but with the veterans' spouses, be a male or a female. And I asked for funding from the Department of Defense. It was a combination of Department of Defense and the psychiatric department at the VA Medical Center. I asked them for extra funding to do some extra stuff with the children, who I was pretty sure had secondary trauma and or vicarious. Here I am again acknowledging the impact on children, which I think was the reason I was sent to the planet. And I did that work for 5 years in a program called Operation Outreach, several satellites all over the country. We had lost, I think one of the reasons they set those programs in place, we had lost about 57,000 veterans when they got home, because of the illness, the stress, the depression, the alcohol, the kind of risk-taking things, the domestic issues that when people are really, really having mental health issues, those were the reasons we were losing so much. So the program was set up. After 5 years, they asked us to come into the VA physically and work with the other veterans that were still there from like Korea or World War II. Soon be with the Gulf veterans a little bit later. But I'd spent 16 years doing it. One of the parts of the work that I felt that I had been able to make a major contribution is a lot of the veterans had schizophrenia and other like illnesses where the capacity for self-sufficiency was not really there. It was very, very unstable. And so I was asked to connect with the Lieberman study they were doing a research project to see if we could help those particular veterans be able to navigate the communities, the social systems, the services that they need, and retain that information, be able to kind of go through some steps to become self-sufficient. So I ran that research project for a number of years. And it was interesting, many, many years later, I don't know how this happened. I must have been an angel. I was someplace and visiting somebody, and I was coming into their driveway, and the mailman was at the box delivering some postage to them or the neighborhood in general. And this person called me, Miss Kyer? And I said, what? It kind of startled me. I didn't know him, and I didn't really recognize him. I wasn't looking. He says, Miss Kyer, remember me from the vet center? You were my counselor. And so my startle was that he remembered me, but that the joy almost made me cry that he was able to become a postman when he was severely schizophrenic and non-compliant with medicine when I was working with him. So that was a really interesting thing. I think, like I said, it might have been an angel at a time that I was feeling like, what am I doing? Am I making any difference for some to be reminded that, yeah, you made an impact. You touched somebody's life. So yeah, I was able to move forward from that, but I was so thrilled and surprised to see him. Okay, so I did that for 16 years, and I had a personal crisis in my family. One of my children was in a near fatal state, and I needed to rush to California to attend to them. And ultimately, we exchanged a kidney, and it took a 2-year battle to sustain him. And of course, that meant everything changed it because I left everything back in New York, and had to make some major changes and shifts. Ultimately, I never went back because it took so long. It just made sense for me to reestablish a new life. It was no point that I was going to be able to leave him until he really take care of himself and get back to work. In that interim, I got a transfer from the Bronx VA to the Martinez, California VA. And one of the staff members that I was working with for a couple of years, we were really, really close. Her mother was the head of a division of Casey Family Programs. And this is a child foster care agency. Big, big, big deal. Deep, deep pockets, able to do wonderful things. But they were at a cookout, and her mother says, I need a social worker, but I need a person with an education background who used to teach because she wanted to set up this special program for foster kids, preparation of youth for employment, PI, preparation of youth for employment. And so my friend, Corky, said, oh, I know this the person. She was a teacher, 6th grade teacher. She's a social worker. And part of the reason I'm smiling, I don't remember applying for any of the jobs I really, really had except to be a teacher. Those things kind of came after me. So the director hired me to come to work in foster care. And I really, perhaps more than any other place, felt in my element, my strongest sense of purpose, because now I'm fully helping children who are in desperate need. All manner of horrible things had happened, and we got to rescue, remove, recover, help the healing process, get things, services set up for the mental health services, medical services, was in control of their education, sit down at the table and make sure that their services to help them, whether they had developmental challenges or whatever, or academic deficiencies, whatever. And I was just roaring. I was flying out to bed in the morning. But a change became over me a little bit. And I think it took other people who knew me closely to recognize some changes, subtle, but real, profound in my mood, my emotions that could seesaw, a tendency to try to be in control of something, which is not my nature. Generally laid back and calm and engaging to people, but it was kind of like almost a panic was taking over something else horrible because there were some tragedies in that work. Sometimes we couldn't get there soon enough, or by the time we were notified, it was too late. And I know that it was disturbing my sleep. I know that because I knew I had a doctor do a sleep study on me. He says, you only probably sleep in 3 hours a night. And that had gone on for a while. But what other people notice is my shortness, not only at work, but at home. When I got home from work and my children come running to me, Mommy, I want to show you this. Look at this. We did. And I just wanted them to get away from me. And that's uncommon. If they did the slightest little thing, and I was really blessed to have good children, I would just kind of like snap or So I said to them at some point, I says, when I come in the door, give me a quick kiss real quick. And then go away. Don't ask me anything. Let me go upstairs to my room and settle down. Then I'll come down and be mommy. And that was something somebody asked me to do for their sake. And then at some time I explained. But I think what it was, when I'm looking at children who have so little and that are injured so deeply, and my children who are good, that are very, very fortunate, they have everything they need, and formerly a patient mother. but still a nurturing and protective person. When they ask me for something, it's like I almost said in the back of another part of my conscious, how dare you when all these kids are suffering so much, which is totally unfair, totally unfair. But that's a change that happened. Something I want to talk to you about a little bit later about the chemistry change in our brains and in our bodies and how we think and perceive and feel and experience things. It shifts, it shifts. And actually, that's what working in trauma and tragic crisis-oriented situations will do over time. Anyway, I did that work for 9 years before I had my first heart failure. On the job, I collapsed. And I had a nice, lengthy recovery. And my directors and supervisor, they lightened my tasks when I came back and gave me some more support. But me being me, very, very passionate to save, to rescue, to protect, to prevent, I went back into my same pattern. I can't blame that on anybody but myself. Something else I like to always warn social workers about. And then I had a second heart failure in 2 years. But that one sat me down. It was devastating, highly debilitating, scared the dickens out of me. I was actually on the freeway heading to work when my seatbelt got too tight and did not recognize that that was my heart. And so sitting down in my recliner for weeks, months, because that's all I could do, I was in a pity party, Heather, and I was saying in a rather prayerful way, what am I going to do now? I kind of really knew I shouldn't go back into direct care with that, but still I wanted to contribute. And that's when it came to me, build a company and teach people in the fields of human services, and especially social workers, not to make the mistake that you made. Teach them to understand the overall impacts, the risks of that work. Teach them that loving people, being passionate, kind, and empathetic to people does not make you immune to the impacts of the levels of stress that you're working under every single day. Teach them to be observant about those warning signals in your body, like those little somatic complaints that your body saying, sit down, stop, take a breath, take a walk, you're doing too much. Things that I always have surveyed people of all my conferences and workshops and always get hands raised. We don't pay attention because we're so focused on them and our responsibilities to them. And that's something I wanted to help people reverse. And so I built a company, the Kyer Group Corporation. It wasn't a corporation at first, it was just a Kyer Group, but over time, because it really was expansive and I wanted to do more with the program, not just teach and train people, but consult with them. And I also wanted to train other people to do the work. It was interesting. It just kind of exploded in terms of agent, because I didn't work with individuals. I worked with the whole agency, the whole team, whether they were, law enforcement or probation or medical teams, psychiatric teams, immigration people, other veterans groups. And my work, incidentally, the whole corporation was about compassion fatigue, which was kind of new at the time. Not too many people knew about it. And a few people were trying to be very discouraging. Compassion fatigue. I even had some professional persons tell me, well, it was only a couple, say to me, well, if the job is discomforting, then maybe they're not a right fit for the job. I said, if you took that position, everybody in those fields of services gets discomforted at least once a day, at the very least. So that's not the right approach to do. But it blew up. Once that training was out there, word of mouth, people were asking agencies, over half the country was saying, I need you to, let's get on. I was flying all around and taking the Amtrak and taking buses up and down the coast to get to these agencies, and that was fine. But here's the danger again. I wasn't tired, so I told myself. I lived out of a suitcase. I might some months be home 4 days a month. But boy, it was such important work, and it was such an impact when you could meet a whole group of attorneys working in immigration, and they're kind of coming apart and these agencies are coming apart because of the weight and the pressure of people in sex work and sex trafficking, human trafficking. And they could be broken coming into the conference center or my workshop center or the hotel place where we meet, and then walk out of there and say, yeah, we can still do this work. That was motivation for me. That's what kept me going. But again, while I was going, I wasn't thinking too much about me. Now, I'm an author on this subject. I'm an expert on this subject. But it's something about us. If the need is really, really high external to me, I have to check myself because I will move toward that and not pay as much attention to my own self-care and wellness. So the strategy was, and it shifted in all of my trainings, that I believe all of us in the fields of human services need accountability partners. And we need to find people we could trust and give them permission to check us, to notice us, to see us, that we're doing too much, and give them permission to shut us down. Like I like very, very bossy people. Say, okay, Bev, you need to stop. Well, you need to shut it down for the day. And I might say, yeah, I'm too busy and I got too much to do. And they say, you're right. I'm going to give you 10 minutes and then I'm going to shut everything down for you. I need that kind of person to stop me or, say something at the conference table and say, let it go now. You've done enough. You said enough. And I think I strongly believe we all need those people while we're in these fields of service to notice us when we're focused on the others that need us. And so I did that. I was doing pretty well. And I had it kind of leveled out. I have about, I want to say 4 of my people who text me all the time. So, are you getting hydrated? To get out the chair and take a walk? And they kind of stay on top of me. And COVID hit. And when COVID hit, the work really escalated. What was happening in the agencies all over the place. It was not only that they had staff members that were getting sick, they had relatives that were getting sick and some people not making it. But with that, the impact of that, the quarantine, it shifted everything about who was available to work, who was not, the caseloads, what was happening to the clients. You couldn't be there. One of the saddest things, in addition to the loss of life, to have a team of attorneys or a team of social workers and teams of teachers who could not be mandated reporters because the children were in the house with the predator. If the police ever went there, they couldn't get the children to stick with the allegation. They would retract. And I was saying, well, yeah, but because you're going to leave them in the house, you can't take them anywhere. And so I was working with what I think a lot of survivors' guilt, a lot of moral conflict. But I could do it. I could do it. So I was just doing. And I was very, very reminded by my accountability partners, my very meddlesome friends, to what do you do at the evening when you finish working with these agencies? Because another shift is, as opposed to me flying all over or busing or using some form of transportation to get to these agencies, because of the quarantine, I was sitting on this computer on Zoom, and I could be in 3 states in one day. So I allowed it to get stacked up. I went from working in 17 states to 28 states in the first 2 months of COVID. And so I had to be extra careful, and I was. And then the most awful thing happened was January 6th, the insurrection. And I finished working with an agency in the Midwest. I remember that because I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning for their 7 a.m. shift. And when I finished with them, I had another group that I was supposed to get on with 10:30 for them. And I was going to run downstairs and get a cup of coffee or something. And the phone rang. And it was somebody who, I know you don't do individual work, but I knew we need a referral because this happened to this child, this parent. It was a crisis. And I was going to make a referral, but I needed to get online with somebody else. So I decided to make a note. And I reached across to get a sticky pad to make a note. That's when my third heart failure. My chest just exploded. That was after watching that thing. And I think that was the breaking point for me. And so I went into something called broken heart syndrome. I wanted to talk to you about that. It took, my son fortunately was here working also in quarantine. And so he got me in the ambulance, and it took them the whole ride. They kept saying, it's a heart attack. No, it's not a heart attack. It's a heart attack. No, it's not a heart attack. And once in the hospital in cardiac ICU, it took them about 6 hours to diagnose because it didn't fit in any of the profiles that they're used to. And it was actually called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, which translates to broken heart syndrome. I had only heard that term a few years ago when I had one of those doctors that are holistic. And she said that to me many, many years ago. She says, you have broken heart syndrome. And I thought she was being metaphorical because the work certainly broke my heart a lot. And then I let it go. But to find out that it was a real structural thing, when the stress was so intense that it caused the heart to spaz over and over and over. It's incredibly painful. And it went on for hours. And while that happened, it twisted, misshapen the heart so that it was a bulb on the top and very narrow, which looked like an octopus. And Takotsubo is a Japanese word for octopus. And so when I learned that, then I said, boy, I have some story to tell. I quickly did a broadcast because here's my suspicion, Heather. If I had paid attention, if I knew anything about how bad stress could attack the human body, and I knew quite a bit, risk factors, illnesses, mild, serious, or fatal. But for something, the stress to be to such a degree that misshapen the heart, I'd have done things very different, but I certainly wanted to teach about it. Because my suspicion is that a lot more people in those very intensely crisis-oriented tragedies, victimization areas of human services are at risk of that. And maybe it's on the way, they don't even know it's coming. Because I certainly had no symptoms to warn me until that day it exploded at the desk. And so that's part of my current mission is to talk. As I said, I really hastily made a broadcast, put on YouTube someplace about broken heart syndrome for people to pay attention and kind of get screened for that. But again, that goes all the way back to the importance of me talking about self-care for everybody in the field. And I want to remind you that no matter how passionate or purpose or a sense of mission or a sense of cause you have to do the work, which I did in spades, you're still at risk if you don't know to watch for the indicators, address them early. Early intervention is key. Stabilize yourself, decompress yourself, stop and breathe several times throughout the day. Recharge yourself or reset yourself every single day, as opposed to allowing the stress to be cumulative, exacerbate in your system and compounded by all the other things, not just your work, but family responsibilities, what's going on socially in the world. That's all factors that are swirling around in our heads and creating the kind of chemistries that challenge our wellness. And so that's an important piece. I came up with my 3 R's. And this is I do for some agencies, they get online for 2 hours or 1 hour. And I just have these little mini sessions for them to release, reboot, and recharge. That's Beverly Kyer's 3 R's. And that's just the format that we use. The release is to have a check-in and just kind of open up and get stuff off your chest, no matter what it is, personally or professionally, just to kind of learn to get it out, which was a really important lesson because I know, in a lot of cultures and maybe even some gender differences, people don't like to let people know they're struggling, they're in trouble, they don't talk. And so that's a real code switch in how we think about sharing, but people do it. And the reboot is some kind of technique, some kind of methodology to decompress the body, unconstrict the body, get breath in the nervous system calm down. So we do that each time. And then recharge is I really kind of mandate. They look at me like that is being the big aunt They're saying, look, what are you going to do for yourself tonight? And it's got to be something ridiculous, something fun, something relaxing. Don't tell me about no shopping, groceries, or nothing like that. And so we got them in the habit of even planning at the beginning of the day. When I get home, I'm gonna walk, I'm gonna run, I'm gonna play a game with the kids, I'm gonna listen to music, I'm a bubble bath, and whatever the case is. But to learn to do those things throughout the day and never, ever, ever wait to the weekend to hold all of that stress for several days before you do something. So that's one of the important pieces of my work. Notwithstanding, I wrote the book to really, really teach people about the neurophysiological impacts with an S, of compassion fatigue. Also, really, the clinical terms for that is secondary trauma and vicarious trauma. And that's been quite eye-opening to a lot of people. And I'm very gratified that I was able to bring that to their awareness and their knowledge for them to embrace what it takes for that. So, yeah. So I just answered a whole lot to two questions.
I appreciate you sharing your journey to date with us, and really a lot of the lessons that you've learned along the way, insights, the wisdom that you've gained throughout that journey.
And much of the wisdom comes from talking to other people who could kind of see and observe, again, from people who watch me. So they were able to say, you're doing this because, and you don't need to do this, and kind of help me go deeply within myself and assess my own moves and why I do what I do. If you don't recognize, then you keep doing the same thing. So, yeah. So that's been that part. That's been a part of it. You asked me the other day or earlier today about what would I say to people in the field or coming into the field. And that always triggered something to me. And a lot of people tell me, because I've done a lot of mentoring, and people always recommend people to take. And when someone says, I want to go into the field of social work, even my former executive assistant, when I stepped down from my company to attend to my health, she said, I'm going to become a social worker. And part of that because I was a social worker and she was somewhat impassioned. But here's what I said. My first thoughts are, oh my goodness, I'm not really all that excited that they said that, because there's two things I really think about the field. And they're opposite parts. First of all, I think it's an incredible field because it's probably one of the few or maybe only profession where you get to work in so many different arenas, whether, children and family stuff and law enforcement and mental health and the veteran services, homeless, human trafficking, people with developmental disabilities, you name it, school-based systems, probation. You get to work in all of them. And I remember those clearly because all of them have been my clients subsequent to my building the company. And that's a really positive, and which goes with this, syncs with this. I am really quick to say to people, really do an assessment, really explore and find out what population or what target population you want to work with. That's really critical to do, whether it's children or men or women or elderly or veterans, in whatever condition or state that they're struggling and challenging with. That's important to do, to pick that for yourself. Why? Because the work is going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be confrontational. The people you're trying to help are going to bite your hand. So it is really important for you to have some passion or commitment to that particular group in whatever particular state of challenges that they're facing. And so I always say that to them. You have resistant clients, and these are people make you say, what the heck am I doing? Am I making any difference? But if you're committed to that population, then you can say, okay, I can still do this because you want to. You want to. Now, I don't believe you should ever be trapped in your work, your service. And So that's basically what I say to people. And then I also tell them to do the 3 hours every day while you do your service. Yeah.
Well, and as you look back, I mean, you've had these really monumental transitions in the type of work that you're doing. And so I'm curious what you might even say to someone who's midway through their career.
People who are midway, and I usually meet people midway or close to retirement. So, it depends on a couple of things. Some people talk to me, sit down, and they say, I'm really, really tired. I don't want to do this more. Retirement is 2 years, 3 years, 5 years away. And I say, you're not trapped. With your degree and your skill set, go somewhere else. We're always in need. We're needed someplace else. So sit down again and kind of look at some other options, some other kind of population. Sometimes when people are in intensely stressful, where the client population has, serious illnesses or near fatal situations, or you work in a unit like I did where people are likely to pass away. I say change your population. We're working with very, very broken children. My son told me this because he's also in the field of services with kids. He said this to me. He says, Mommy, he says, you need to work with some children now that get a broken leg because at least it gets healed. You get the concept? Change about one of the men that I put his story in my book and his work with children who had faced the worst in life, and they were kind of reckless in response to that. So some serious things happened. Some of them wound up in juvenile halls. Some of them wound up in gangs. Some of them got killed. And a couple of situations just about wrecked his life, his personal life, his social life. And we sat down and talked. And he's one of the few people I spoke to privately because he was a former friend in the field. And he left that work and he went to work with something that was akin to police athletic fields. So, it's the kids that were playing, kids that were happy. They weren't very, very fortunate, but at least there were children able to be children inside that realm. And it's a whole different experience. And he got healed that way. He was able to transition. He came back as a director to the former job, but he's always volunteers and works with children, sometime a little softball thing or kids that go to bowling leagues. And people need to make some transitions, make some shifts to take yourself out, like I call, out of the darkness and into the light as much as you can. And if it's not a real job change, then it should be your social life. Get those people, again, accountability partners who are just going to pull you into some interesting things. There's another thing, Heather. I realized quite a while back that the overwhelming consuming nature of that work on the front lines like that, it kind of robs us of things that we formerly enjoyed. We just stopped doing those things. It's this very work, responsibilities, homework, responsibilities, tasks, and duties to do. And we stop enjoying life because we're consumed in that stuff. And that's not a good place to be. And you need those reminders to say, no, 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 no. You need to plan to play. You need to plan to realize. Matter of fact, Dr. Bruce Perry spoke a lot about the importance of activities that are fun activities to release a whole different chemistry, out of your right hemisphere, to be creative, to make stuff, to design stuff, to draw, to play games, the garden, or whatever it is that, make stuff, mold, clay and ceramics. That's important to do. But sit down and make a plan and be intentional about it. And you're probably not going to want to because many people in our field says, I don't have time, but you create time to do it. It is so critical that you do. And if you're not going, then you have a friend like Heather say, no, we're going to do this. We're going out. There's a wine show and there's a street fair out there and we're going.
Mm-hmm.
You need those kind of people to do that. And I have those kind of people because I can't tell you how many times I've gone to something and says, oh, they're having, oh, okay, I got told I was going to the Super Bowl party. yesterday. Nobody asked me because my friend said, there's a Super Bowl party over at so-and-so's house. And I said, oh, really? Yes. He said, and that's not a question. That's where we're going. So you may as well get dressed because I'm coming to get you. That kind of thing. I need people to pull me away from the responsibility. So that's what I would say midway your career. Make some major, major shifts, which are critical for your resilience and your sustainability. And if you really, really at the wall, hit the wall with that job, because like I said, the demand, over caseload, understaffed, hiring freeze, people are tense and conflictual and kind of angry, and move. Move if you have to. Don't go down with the ship. Be as supportive and helpful and as you can, and understand where people are. Don't even get angry with them if they're like that, because that's from their stress. But make a move for yourself. Never let yourself feel trapped.
I'm curious about, well, I have this like lingering question from when you were talking about your heart attacks and the broken heart syndrome. And I'm curious, like, if you were to ask your heart what it was trying to communicate with you, what do you think it would say?
Oh, I know what my heart would say. Um, you're doing a good job. You're giving it your best. And when your best is not good enough, that's what you're telling yourself is a lie. So be grateful at the end of the day and say to yourself, I've given it all. Now I turn it over. And that's to whomever you believe in. To me, it's God. It could be the universe. It could be the creator. Whatever the case is. But my heart said, you pushed when you didn't have to. You kept going when you should have stopped and slowed down. You didn't sit. You didn't take a pause. You needed to be needed. But that was a lesson. That was a slap upside the head. So that's some of what my heart would have said. Matter of fact, it did. Kind of warned me to continue this. And we can end your story. Or slow down and pace yourself. And there's still a lot more you could do differently, but you could still do more.
So, as you think about this next chapter and what you want to do differently,
Mm-hmm.
and still want to contribute, what do you want that to look like?
Well, I'm going to continue writing. Matter of fact, I'm going to write some little mini booklets. I've done a lot of work with managers in the face of the change, but particularly it started with the COVID, how they had to try to micromanage people or macro manage people who were home and not on site. But I want to do some more of those kind of lessons in teaching how to people to manage in the face of some massive change. And, booklets, I still do those little mini, I don't do as nearly as much work as I used to do. But there's just a few groups that I still get online with for about an hour or 2 hours for some. And I just kind of support them through my 3 R's. And I'm moving to Portugal. So here's a major change for me. I choose to be in a different environment to help from there. Since I've already compromised my heart, I don't think I wouldn't want to put myself through another major blow. But I'll be working, doing those consults and those support groups from over there along with my writing. And I'm going to be having a lot more fun and relaxation and very limited time pressures. One of the nice things about 8 hours ahead is the services that I still do from here on Zoom. They're around 2:00 in the afternoon, so I don't have to fly out of bed and get ready and comb my hair and be ready to do people. I could just have a leisurely morning. I meet with some friends for coffee every other Friday morning and take a walk, that kind of thing. Yeah, so it's a very much more leisurely life. And I'm very, very deliberate about how much work that I do. And yet I still have the privilege and the joy of being able to still serve and help in some way. And that was really important to me, given what's happening in the country. That there's going to still be a lot of need. And support the people that I've trained. I've trained over 123 certified specialists. So I'm gratified to know that the work still continues. There's more people to do it. Yeah. Yeah, but Beverly is relaxing and taking a walk. I'm probably going to take up riding my bike till I get over the fear of falling because I don't bounce like I used to.
Yeah, I love that you're going to get to have more fun in this
Mhm.
next chapter.
Yeah.
What are the values that have guided you in your work
Well,
or in your life? Maybe they're not separate, maybe they are.
not, generally, they're not that separate. Um, Actually, one of my values is a gift that I'm very grateful I've had, and it's a gift with a double-edged sword, but that's being empathetic, being an empath. To be able, it's important to me to look at people in very difficult situations, sometimes a little bit of their own making, or maybe an unwillingness to get out of the situation, but to imagine that could have been me. And if it were me, how hard it is to transition in and out of it. And so I was always grateful that I was able to understand on that. And I always hold on to that. No matter how frustrated or disappointed I could get in some actions that are resistant or sabotage the good work, the good plan, is to stop and say, yeah, they're hurting, they're in pain, they're afraid, they don't have a foundation or support outside of this agency to follow through on stuff. I could do that, and that's really important. Of course, integrity and honesty for people. I have always found it really, really important to me to be a human. I don't want any of my clients or patients to look at me and say, well, she got it together and she did this and she did that. Her life is perfect. I do share, even when I do those support groups, that without too much deal, sometimes I'm just totally fractured. And sometimes I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I need to tell somebody, watch my back today. I like to level the playing field in how humans could recognize that we are human, we bleed and we hurt and we make terrible mistakes. I like to tell people sometimes I put my foot all the way in my mouth. So, yeah. And that's important because it makes it safe for people to say, yeah, I messed up too. And whatever the case is, and I don't know what I'm doing today, you know. And so that's another piece too, to be loving to people. Um, Even when they make me really, really annoyed, and even when they give me every clue that they don't love me, that's okay. Because again, I could use that empathy to say they have no foundation for that. And maybe it's frightening, too threatening for them to open up their hearts or to trust. They don't owe me their trust. I need to prove it, that I'm worthy of some trust. So that's another guiding value for me. And to be inclusive of the people to help, that I don't need to be the only know-it-all. I'm a believer, like one of my teachers is that every human being should have at least 40 people that are their people. And I know you could be a really, really superhero kind of social worker, but they're going to leave the agency and go out there in the real world. They need other people for other aspects of their life, to fill other holes in their life, to continue teaching, to continue some relationships when the kids age out of service. I make sure that my children have relationships so they got some place to go for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, for Easter, for holidays, for Labor Day. People they can sit down and talk to and learn from. That's really important value for me.
Thank you. As we get ready to wrap up our time together today, is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners?
Well, I just want to close by repeating myself, the importance of recognizing that no matter what, how passionate you feel about the work, that it will take a toll. It does have neurophysiological impact. So I always encourage people, I'm encouraging you to learn to be mindful of what's going on inside of you. Listen to your body, feel your body. Listen to, pay attention to the indicators, learn what they are. There's a list of, matter of fact, I wrote lists of indicators in my book. Recognize them and honor them and respond to them. Early intervention is critical. You're going to get distressed, but you could bring yourself down. And that's going to happen several times a day. Bring yourself down several times a day. That's just important to do. And then in the middle or the end of your career, you'll be a healthy person, ready for the next page of your life.
Well, thank you again for joining us. It's always a delight to chat with you. Appreciate you being here.
Likewise.
Thank you for listening to CASAT Conversations, your resource for exploring behavioral health topics. We hope you found today's conversation timely and meaningful. Please share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. If you want to learn more, visit us at our blog at CASATOnDemand.org.
CASAT Podcast Network. This podcast has been brought to you by the CASAT Podcast Network, located within the Center for the Application of Substance Abuse Technologies, a part of the School of Public Health at the University of Nevada, Reno. For more podcast information and resources, visit CASAT.org.